At work a few weeks ago, I discovered something really cool. I was looking through the collections at Kew and I came across a plant called the Royal Bean of Calabar, or Physostigma venenosum. It's a bit of a grandiose name for a plant which doesn't look too dissimilar from a common runner bean. But the Calabar bean is more than just a distant relative of the greens that you have on the table with your Sunday dinner. I'm Sam, and I'm going to tell you more about the beans which kill witches. The ordeal bean of Calabar gets its name from what were known as trials by ordeal. These trials were carried out at the start of the last millennium and were used as a means to determine someone's guilt by putting them through either a significant amount of pain or attempting to kill them. If the individual healed or survived, then it was believed that their god, whoever they may be, had deemed them innocent and thusly saved them. And if they succumbed to their wounds and died, it was believed that they got what they deserved. None of these trials by ordeal were especially pleasant ceremonies, and many of them resulted in lots and lots of innocent people dying. Trials by ordeal weren't the only trials which were used to see whether someone was innocent or guilty based upon the will of God. In fact, you've probably seen another example if you've watched any history documentaries or Game of Thrones, that being trial by combat. It's a very similar principle. It's assumed that when you step into a trial by combat, that God will imbue you with some kind of holy power as you step into the ring, and therefore you'd come out victorious. Or not, in the case of Oberyn Martell. Because of the fact there was a risk that innocent people could die and guilty people could walk away scot-free, trials by ordeal were officially outlawed in 1215 by Pope Innocent III due to their irrationality. Essentially, he didn't want people to start questioning their faith as a product of someone who was obviously guilty getting away with their crime. Regardless of them being outlawed though, trials by ordeal carried on until well into the 16th century, and even after that as a means to hunt witches. Although they became less of a trial and more of a means to test the qualities of witches. For example, whether or not a woman would float when towed behind a boat. Now, it's these witch hunts where the ordeal bean of Calabar comes into the picture. The beans of this plant contain a really toxic chemical called Physostigma, which, when ingested, will result in death within 30 minutes. In Nigeria, where this plant grows, the beans would be taken and ground down in a mortar along with some water, and then fed to someone who is accused of being a witch or being possessed by an evil spirit. If the accused died, then the accusation was seen to have been correct all along. But if they instead regurgitated the concoction and survived, then it was thought that either they hadn't been a witch or the evil spirit had been exorcised from their body. Unlike in many other parts of the world, these witch trials still carry on in Nigeria, even though they're illegal there. But the bean is also used across the table from those witch hunters. In fact, the Calabar bean is also used by witches and witch doctors themselves. In 2001, the torso of a child was found floating in the Thames by Tower Bridge. The body was found with no limbs and the head had been removed too. No one knows what happened to the boy, no one knows why it happened, and to this day, no one even knows his name. Because of the lack of evidence, the police were stumped as to what had happened. So they sent the contents of the boy's stomach to Kew Gardens, where a scientist named Hazel Wilkinson analysed them. She found that inside the boy's stomach, amongst the other things that he'd eaten, were fragments of the shell of a bean that looked incredibly similar to the Calabar bean. Because of the presence of this bean alongside the other things the boy had ingested, it was speculated that the boy had only been in the country for a number of days and had been trafficked from southwestern Nigeria to be murdered in what is known as a Mutiny killing, a process where witch doctors kill children to harvest their body parts to use to make potions called muti. The case remained open for years with limited information coming in dribs and drabs, and to this day, all we can do is speculate as to what happened. However, since this case was reported so widely in the press, the number of known muti killings in the United Kingdom have dropped off significantly, likely due to the publicity of this story. I never thought I'd find a story this interesting about a plant which doesn't look too dissimilar from something that you could find on your dinner table. But it just goes to show that there is a lot more than meets the eye to even the most mundane looking of plants. If you want to learn more about the incredible plants and animals that we share this planet with, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you ever find an interesting story you'd like me to look into, you can leave it down in the comments or DM me on Instagram at UnchartedScience, and who knows, I may research it and make a video out of it. I hope that you have a lovely few weeks everyone, and I'll see you next time. Ta-ra!